Welcome, traveler. Tonight, we are at sea. The year is 1000 AD. The North Atlantic stretches in every direction, cold, gray, enormous, and cutting through it, a single Norse longship, its sail full of wind, its crew of 35 men silent at their oars. And at the prow, a man named Leif Eriksson. He is looking west, toward something no Norse eye has ever seen. Come and sail with him. Let the ocean carry you to sleep. The ship is called the Sea Serpent. She is a Nör, a deep-sea trading vessel, broader and more stable than the longships built for war, 30 feet wide at the beam, 55 feet long from stem to stern. Her hull is built of overlapping oak planks, each one shaped and fitted by hand. The gaps between the planks caulked with animal hair and pine tar, pressed in tight by men who knew that their lives would depend on the work they did in the shipyard. She has been at sea for 19 days, has crossed the full width of the North Atlantic, from the harbor of Brattahlid in Greenland, west and slightly south, following a bearing that Leif has calculated from the stars and the color of the water and the behavior of the birds. She rides the swells well, not easily. Nothing is easy in the North Atlantic, but with the particular competence of a well-built ship in the hands of experienced sailors, rising to meet each wave, falling away behind it, rising again. The rhythm is constant, has been constant for 19 days. The men on board have stopped noticing it. It has become simply the background condition of their existence. The way the heartbeat is always there, always working, mostly unfelt. The ship breathes with the sea, and the sea breathes on and on. Leif Eriksson is 26 years old. He is the son of Eric the Red, the man who discovered Greenland, who was exiled from Iceland for manslaughter and sailed west into the unknown and found a vast cold land and brought settlers there. Exploration is in his blood, literally perhaps, but also by choice. Leif has grown up with the stories of his father's voyage, has heard them at the fire since he was old enough to understand words. The way the sea opened before the ships, the way the coast appeared, first as a dark line on the horizon, then as cliffs, then as a land that no Norse foot had touched. The feeling his father described of standing on that shore, of being the first. Leif has wanted that feeling his whole life. Not the fame of it, though fame matters in the Norse world. The feeling itself. The specific sensation of looking at something no human eye has ever seen. He is tall, like his father, dark-haired, unlike his father, who was red-bearded and famous for it. He has his father's eyes, pale gray, the color of North Atlantic water on an overcast day. His face is young but already marked by weather, the particular aging that comes from years of outdoor life in northern latitudes, sun and wind and cold, working on the skin. He stands at the prow because that is where he always stands, has stood there for most of the 19 days at sea. Not because it is comfortable, it is the least comfortable position on the ship, the most exposed to spray and wind, but because it is the furthest forward, the closest to whatever is coming. 35 men, all of them volunteers. When Leif announced the voyage in the hall at Brattahlid, more than 80 men had put their hands up. He had chosen carefully, not the youngest or the most eager. Eagerness and youth are useful, but they are not enough. He had chosen men who had been to sea before, men who knew what they were getting into. Men who could work in silence when silence was needed, and in coordination when coordination was needed. Men who would not panic. This last quality is the most important and the hardest to assess. You cannot know until the moment comes whether a man will panic, but experience gives indicators. Leif had talked to each man individually, had asked about previous voyages, had listened not just to what they said, but to how they said it, whether they spoke of difficulty with respect or with bravado. Bravado in a sailor is a warning sign. The sea does not reward bravado. It rewards competence and steadiness, and the ability to do what needs to be done when everything is wrong. The men he chose have these qualities. He is confident of this, as confident as a man can be before the thing has been tested. The voyage began, in a sense, with a story. About 15 years ago, a man named Bjarni Herjolfsson was sailing from Iceland to Greenland when he was blown off course, blown far to the west, and saw land, not Greenland. Greenland's coast he knew. This was different land, flat, forested, low. He had not landed, had turned around and found Greenland eventually and arrived and told his story. And the story had spread. Land to the west, unknown land, forested land. In Greenland, trees are scarce and precious. The settlers there must import timber for their buildings and their ships. The idea of a forested land to the west is not merely interesting, it is potentially transformative. Leif had listened to Bjarni's story many times, had asked questions that Bjarni was sometimes annoyed by. How far west? What color was the water? Were there mountains? How did the coast run, north, south, or east-west? He had assembled a picture, incomplete, full of gaps, but a picture, and he had decided that the gaps were navigable, that the picture was good enough to sail toward, that the risk was worth the possible reward. His father had agreed, had wanted to come himself, in fact, was stopped only by a bad omen on the day of departure, a fall from his horse that he took as a sign. Eric the Red, who had crossed the North Atlantic alone, decided not to sail because his horse stumbled. Leif had not argued. You do not argue with omens. You sail without your father and you hope the omen belongs to him and not to you. Navigation in the Norse world is both simpler and more complex than people today imagine. Simpler because there are no charts, no precise instruments, no GPS or compass or sextant. More complex because the navigator must hold everything in his head. The stars, the sun, the color of the water, the behavior of birds, the direction and character of the wind, the feel of the swells under the hull, and the accumulated knowledge of previous voyages, the bearing from Greenland to Bjarni's sighting, the adjustments needed for the wind conditions they have encountered, the corrections made when the stars showed they had drifted. Leif navigates by a method called dead reckoning. You know where you started. You know your speed, estimated from the feel of the ship and the behavior of a weighted line thrown overboard. You know your direction from the sun and stars. From these three things, you calculate where you are. It is an approximation, always an approximation, but a skilled navigator's approximation is close enough to sail by. Leif has been doing this since he was 14, has sailed Greenland's coast and the route to Iceland, and once to Norway with his father. He is good at it. He knows he is good at it. Not with arrogance, just with the honest assessment of a craftsman who has tested his skills against reality and found them adequate. On the 19th day, the water changes color. It has been deep Atlantic blue, the color of depth, of 3 miles of water below the keel. Now it shifts, greener, lighter, shallower water ahead. Leif notices it immediately, says nothing yet, watches for an hour. The color continues to shift. He calls his second, a man named Thorvald, his own brother, 2 years younger, built like their father. Points at the water. Thorvald looks, nods slowly. Shallower, he says. Leif nods. They both look west. Nothing visible on the horizon yet, but the water does not lie. There is land ahead. The question is how far. That evening, just before the light fails completely, a man in the bow cries out, "Land!" The word moves through the ship like a wave. 35 men standing, straining to see. A dark line on the western horizon. Low, indistinct at this distance. But there, Leif does not allow himself to feel it yet. Not fully. He has been wrong before, has mistaken fog banks and cloud formations for land on previous voyages. But the watercolor has been changing all day. And the birds, there have been birds for the last 2 hours. Seabirds, not oceanic birds. Birds that do not range far from shore. He orders the ship to heave to. They will wait for dawn, will not approach an unknown coast in darkness. This is basic seamanship. The most dangerous moment of any voyage is the approach to an unknown shore. Hidden rocks, unpredictable currents, shoals that can rip the bottom from a ship without warning. Better to wait, to arrive in light with full visibility, with time to read the water and the coast before committing. The men drop anchor in 30 feet of water. The ship settles, swings gently on the anchor line. The dark line on the horizon is still visible in the last of the light. Then the darkness comes and it disappears. But everyone knows it is there. The ship is very quiet that night. 35 men lying on their oar benches or in the small spaces between the cargo, trying to sleep, mostly failing. The dawn comes slowly, gray first, then pale gold in the east, the light spreading across the water from behind them, and to the west, the coast, more distinct now, low cliffs of pale stone, running north to south as far as he can see in either direction. Behind the cliffs, flat land, and behind the flat land, against the morning sky, trees, the dark shapes of a vast forest. Leif stands at the prow and looks at this for a long time. He has been imagining this moment for years, has built it in his mind from Bjarni's incomplete account. The reality is both exactly what he imagined and completely different. Exactly the same because it is what it is. Land, trees, the coast Bjarni described. Completely different because no imagination prepares you for the actual scale of it. The cliffs stretching away in both directions, the forest massive behind them, the sense of a land that is not small. This is not an island. This is something large, something that goes on. He cannot see how far. He orders the anchor raised. They find a place to land in the early afternoon. A beach of flat gray stones, sheltered by a headland to the north. The water clear enough to see the bottom. No visible rocks. A river entering the sea just north of the beach, which means fresh water. Leif goes ashore first. This is his right as leader of the expedition, and his responsibility. He steps out of the small boat into ankle-deep water. The stones shift slightly under his feet. He walks up the beach, stops, stands on the first land west of Greenland that any Norse foot has touched. He does not make a speech, does not perform the moment, just stands, breathing the air of this place, which is different, warmer than Greenland, much warmer, smelling of pine forest and something sweet he cannot identify. The sounds are different too. Birds he has never heard. The wind in trees that are not the small wind-bent trees of Greenland. Real trees, tall trees. He can see them from the beach, rising above the cliff line. He breathes for another moment, then turns and waves the men ashore. They spend 3 days exploring the immediate area. Leif sends men in different directions each morning, north along the coast, south along the coast, inland. He goes inland himself on the 2nd day, into the forest. It is extraordinary. He has never been in a forest like this. In Greenland, trees are small, stunted by wind and cold. In Iceland, where he spent time as a boy, there are birch forests, but nothing like this. This forest is ancient, the trees enormous, trunks wider than a man can reach around, the canopy so thick that the light reaches the forest floor in shafts and patches, rather than evenly. The ground beneath his feet soft with decades of fallen leaves, compressed into a dark, rich soil. The smell is extraordinary. Resin and earth and something alive in a way that the landscapes he knows are not. He walks slowly, not cautiously. There is no sign of people, no tracks, no cleared land, just slowly, because the place demands it. Because moving quickly through this forest would be a kind of disrespect. He stops and leans against one of the great trees, puts his hand on the bark. The bark is rough and deep furrowed. He stands there for a long time, thinking about his father, about what Eric would say standing here, about the men who will follow these first footsteps. If the reports of this voyage reach Greenland and Iceland and Norway, as he intends them to, about what this place might become. On the 3rd day of exploration, one of the crew, a man named Tyrkir, an older German who has been with the family for years, comes back from an inland expedition in a state of obvious excitement. He is talking before he reaches the camp, words coming fast, mixing German and Norse in the way he does when he is agitated. Leif goes to meet him. "Tyrkir," he says, "calm down. What did you find?" And Tyrkir shows him. He is carrying a bundle of something, vines, with clusters of small dark berries on them. Grapes, wild grapes, growing in the forest interior. Tyrkir, who grew up in the wine-growing regions of Germany, recognizes them immediately. He is almost weeping with joy. Leif holds a cluster up, looks at it. A small dark grape, wild, nothing like the cultivated grapes of the south, but a grape, growing freely, in abundance, in this new land. He tastes one, sweet, slightly tart. He looks at Tyrkir. He has just named this land without intending to. Vinland, wine land, the land of grapes. They build a camp. This is not a quick decision. Leif has come to explore, but exploration without a base is dangerous. They need somewhere to store their supplies, to shelter from weather, to work from. The site he chooses is on a slight rise above the river mouth. Good drainage, clear sight lines in multiple directions, access to fresh water and to the sea. The men build quickly and well. They are Norse. Building in wood is something they do naturally, instinctively, the way breathing is natural. A longhouse, roughly built but solid, big enough for all 35 men. A smaller building for storing supplies. A fire pit in the center of the longhouse, with a smoke hole above it. Sleeping platforms along the walls. In 3 days they have a habitable camp. It is not comfortable by any standards they know from home, but it is shelter. It is solid. It is theirs. Leif walks around it after it is finished, looks at it from the outside. The first Norse building in the Western world, the first permanent human structure, as far as he knows, on this coast. He is aware of the significance, not grandiosely, just quietly aware, that this thing they have built on this particular ground, on this particular day, is part of something larger than any of them. The nights at Vinland are different from anything Leif has known, different from Greenland, where the nights in summer barely darken, just a long twilight that goes on and on. Here real darkness comes, complete darkness, the kind he associates with winter back home, but warm, warm darkness, full of sounds, the sounds of a living forest at night, things that move in the trees, birds that call in darkness, strange calls, nothing like the seabirds of the north, insects which there are almost none of in Greenland, filling the warm air with a constant hum, the river, always the river, just north of the camp. The first night he lies awake for a long time listening, not with fear, with the particular alertness of someone encountering something genuinely new, his senses trying to categorize and file what they are receiving, failing mostly, because there is no category for this, no previous experience to map it to. He realizes, at the edge of his knowledge. Everything here is new, the trees, the animals, the insects, the birds, the smell of the air at night, the warmth, the darkness that is somehow different from darkness elsewhere. He lies and listens and lets the newness wash over him, does not try to understand it, just receives it. Over the following weeks, Leif sends expeditions further and further from the camp, north along the coast, where the land becomes more rugged, the forest thicker, south, where the coast flattens out and the trees are different, lower, the canopy less dense, inland, where the forest eventually gives way to open land, grass, and then forest again, going on and on toward a horizon that gives no hint of ending. He does not go on all of these expeditions himself. He stays at the camp often, managing the work of the settlement, receiving reports from the returning parties. But the reports that come back are extraordinary. Salmon in the river, larger than any salmon they have seen. Timber in abundance and quality beyond anything Greenland can offer. Land that looks in places almost as if it could be farmed. Wild animals they cannot name. Birds of colors they have never seen. And no people. This is the thing that surprises him most. This vast land. All this abundance. And no sign of human habitation. No buildings. No cleared land. No middens. No tracks he can identify as human. He does not conclude from this that the land is empty. He knows it is not empty. He has seen things, a carved stick, what might be a fish trap in one of the smaller rivers, that suggest people have been here, are perhaps not far away. He is careful, sends his men in groups, always armed, tells them to avoid confrontation at any cost. If they see people, they are to withdraw, to come back and report. He does not want a fight, does not want anything that would turn this extraordinary discovery into a disaster. At night, after the men are asleep, Leif often sits outside, in front of the longhouse on a flat stone that has become his thinking place over the weeks they have been here. He looks at the sky. The stars here are the same stars. He finds the North Star immediately. It is lower in the sky than it is at home, showing him how far south he has come. But the same star, the same anchor point. He thinks about home, about his mother Theodilde, who will be worried. She is always worried when he sails. Has been worried his whole life, he thinks, by the men in her family and their compulsion toward the sea. His father, now him. He thinks about what he will say when he returns. How to describe this? The forest, the grapes, the warmth, the salmon, the size of the land. He knows already that the description will fall short, that words, Norse words, The words he has for landscape and nature and abundance will not fully carry it. The people back home will hear him and nod and imagine something, and what they imagine will be smaller than the reality. It is always smaller. The reality of a thing always exceeds what language can carry. This is why people have to come themselves. Why, when he reports this voyage, there will be others who will not rest until they too have stood on this shore. He is counting on it. He wants people to come here. He wants this land, Vinland, to become something, a Norse settlement, a place where the wood is plentiful and the land is rich and the summers are warm, a place unlike Greenland. He does not know if it will happen, does not know all the obstacles, does not know about the Skrælings, the native people, and what they will make of Norse settlement on their land. He only knows what he sees and what he feels, and what he feels sitting on his flat stone under the stars of Vinland is something he will carry with him for the rest of his life. The specific weight of having done the thing he was born to do. In the 5th week, a storm comes. It arrives from the northeast, sweeping down the coast. The sky darkens over 3 hours. The wind builds. By evening it is a serious storm, the kind that the North Atlantic breeds, sudden, violent, indifferent. The long ship, pulled up on the beach, has to be dragged further up and tied. The camp is battered. The roof of the longhouse leaks in 3 places. The men work through the night in wind and rain, making repairs, keeping the fire alive, managing the ropes on the ship. Leif works alongside them. This is important. A leader who stays dry while his men get wet is a leader whose authority is purely formal. He is wet, like everyone else, cold, like everyone else, working, like everyone else. The storm lasts 2 days, and then it passes. The way North Atlantic storms always pass, suddenly leaving a washed, clean sky and a flat, exhausted sea. The men emerge from the longhouse and look around at the damage. It is manageable. The ship is intact. The camp is intact. One of the smaller trees near the camp has fallen, missing the storehouse by perhaps 10 feet. Leif looks at where it fell, then at the storehouse, then at the men. He says nothing, but something passes through the group, a collective recognition. They are here. They have survived. The ship is sound. Whatever comes next is manageable. After 6 weeks at Vinland, Leif makes the decision to return, not because he wants to, but because the season is moving. The nights are getting longer, not dramatically but noticeably. Autumn is coming, an autumn in this unknown land, far from any Norse settlement, with a crew and a ship and a cargo of timber that the families back home are counting on. He is responsible for these 35 men, for their lives. He has pushed the season as far as he can. Now it is time to go. He tells the crew on a morning in late summer. Some of them are disappointed. He can see it. They are comfortable here, fed, warm, doing work that feels meaningful. Others are relieved. 35 men, 6 weeks, no serious incident. The luck has held. Better to leave while it holds than to push further. They spend 3 days preparing, loading the ship with timber, as much as she can carry, with dried fish, with vines of the wild grape, Tyrkir's greatest find, with water and provisions for the crossing, with the careful stowing of everything that must survive the North Atlantic to be useful. Leif walks the camp one last time. The longhouse, the storehouse, the fire pit, the flat stone where he sat on so many evenings. He does not try to take anything with him from these things, but he looks. really looks. The way he has learned from long experience to look at things he is about to leave. The morning of departure is clear, cold for the first time since they arrived, the first real breath of autumn in the air. The ship floats in the river mouth, loaded and ready. The men wade out to her, climb aboard, take their positions. Leif is the last to leave the shore. He stands on the beach for a moment, the forest behind him, the river to his left, the sea ahead. He has stood on many shores, has left many places. This leaving is different. He knows that what is behind him will be talked about, for as long as there are people who tell stories. He does not know this with arrogance. He knows it the way you know when something is real, when something has the particular weight of mattering. He turns, wades to the ship, climbs aboard, takes his position at the prow. The oars go in. The ship moves. The shore falls away. The forest becomes a line, then a smudge, then nothing, just the sea. The return crossing takes 23 days, longer than the outward voyage. The winds are different going east, mostly against them, which means more rowing, more fatigue, slower progress. But the men are in good shape, fed well for 6 weeks, rested more or less. They row when they must and sail when they can. Make progress every day. Leif navigates, uses the stars at night, the sun by day. The same skills, the same method. Dead reckoning across the ocean. On the 14th day they sight a whale, a blue whale impossibly large, surfacing just north of their course. The ship goes quiet. 35 men watching. The whale surfaces 3 times, then it is gone. No one speaks for a long time after. On the 19th day the water changes color. Not green this time, gray. The particular gray of the Greenland shelf. Close now. On the 22nd day they sight the coast, and on the 23rd day they sail into the harbor of Brattahlid. The harbor is quiet when they arrive. It is late afternoon. The light low and golden on the water. A few people on the dock, then more, as word spreads that a ship is coming in, then many. His mother is there. He can see her from the ship, standing slightly apart from the crowd. She is not waving. She is not calling out. She is just standing there, watching the ship come in, the way she has watched ships come in for 30 years, the way you watch when you have waited a long time. And the waiting is almost over. He is the first off the ship, steps onto the dock. She comes to him. They embrace. She does not ask him where he has been or what he has found. That will come later. For now she just holds him for a moment, and then she steps back, looks at him, says, "You look well." He says, "I am well." She nods, and that is enough. That night, in the hall at Brattahlid, Leif tells the story, the crossing, the land, the forest, the grapes, the camp, the storm, the weeks of exploration, the return. The hall is silent while he speaks. 35 men who were there, nodding as they recognize the parts they lived, and others, men and women who were not there, listening with the particular attention of people hearing something important. He speaks for a long time, and when he is done the hall is quiet for a moment. Then his father speaks. From the back of the hall, Eric the Red, an old man now, moving carefully, the red beard gone white. He says, "Only one thing, my son," and in those 2 words, everything, the pride, the recognition, the understanding that the son has done what the father always hoped he would do. Leif sits with his cup, feels the warmth of the hall around him, the fire, the familiar smell of home after months away, the sound of people he knows, the weight of the day's exhaustion beginning to settle into his bones, and underneath all of it, Underneath the warmth and the tiredness and the story still alive in him, the memory of that forest, the great trees, the smell of warm earth, the sound of birds he cannot name, the feeling of standing somewhere no human like him had ever stood. He will carry that feeling for the rest of his life. It is his. It belongs to him in a way that nothing else does. Let your own breathing slow now, all the way down. Feel the weight of your body, heavy and still and perfectly held, like a ship at anchor in a safe harbor, after a long crossing, after weeks at sea, after the work is done and the story is told and the fire is warm and the cup is in your hand. You have come a long way tonight. You have sailed the North Atlantic and found a new world. You can rest now. The journey is done. The ship is home. In and out. In and out. The fire is burning low. The hole is quiet. The sea is somewhere out there in the darkness, patient, waiting, as it always waits. But tonight, it can wait. Tonight you sleep, down and down, into the deep, warm sleep of someone who has seen something extraordinary and can carry it now into dreams. Sleep well, traveler. Leif Eriksson is already asleep, and the forest at Vinland is still there, still breathing, still waiting for the next person brave enough to find it.